There's a new development in the north with the Druze right now. Say a little bit about that.
Look, we always had the fantasy of having the Druze on our side, because the Druze in Lebanon and Syria on our side, because the Druze in Israel are the best allies that the Jewish people could have. I mean, I once said in a lecture, because somebody really made me angry, I said, this is a state for Jews and Druze, okay? And it is. And these people are committed to the defense of Israel, and they accept that we are a nation state of the Jewish people, and there is no problem with them. And they are very committed to their brothers in Lebanon and in Syria. When we occupied Lebanon, we tried to make this work, but we couldn't. I think it was a mistake, the way we did it at the time. And now what we are doing, among other things, because Druze who have very senior positions in the Israeli army urge us to do it, and we see every reason to support them in wanting this to happen. I don't know how long it will last, but to be able to defend them from the radical Sunni militias, if they take over, we don't know what al-Shara will bring to Syria. It doesn't look good, in spite of the fact that he tries to make it look good. I'm not very optimistic. But as long as the Druze see it as a threat, and we can help, we should help. We shouldn't occupy Syria or this portion or Jabal Druze, but we should help them if we can. And if one day they don't feel the danger, we don't need to be involved in any way. But at the moment, there is one particular village, Al-Khadr, that is Druze and wants our assistance and wants our support. I'm delighted to give it to them. And Jabal Druze, if we can help them, I think we should. Again, as long as they're threatened and as long as they want our help, not, God forbid, to occupy this portion of Syria.
My understanding is that one of the sort of tenets of Druze, either ideology or religion or culture or something, is that they are loyal to the country, the nation in which they're living. So what are the ramifications if they aren't occupied or they don't become annexed and they don't create their own country in this area, but they become...
The question is if the future Syrian state will allow them to have some kind of, I don't know, partial autonomy, or I don't even think that they seek this. They seek not to be persecuted, right. Okay? So if they will adopt vis-a-vis the Druze a live and let live approach, and they don't want to be associated with us, okay. As long as they want to be associated with us and need our protection, and we can give them this protection without occupying land, I'm for it. At the present, Syria is a divided country. Yeah. You have the Kurds and you have the Druze, and you have on a completely different category, the Alawites, who used to be the persecutors of the rest. But at the moment, the Druze need our protection and want our protection. And as long as they want and need it, fine. The same with the Kurds. As long as they need and want it, fine. Why not? Okay? And by the way, if I would have had Sunni Arabs who are under persecution, and they want our help, and they need it, and we can give it to them without occupying, I would. Why not? Okay? We've helped Jordan. We've saved the existence of Jordan more than once. Okay? Not because we wanted to occupy Amman, but because having a friendly country next to us is much better than having an actively hostile country next to us.
Yeah. I mean, of course, it makes sense that Israel wants to protect persecuted minorities and neighboring
Not
countries.
just minorities. If the majority, like the Sunnis in Syria, are the majority, had they wanted in the south to have our protection, during the civil war, the settlements around the Arab settlements, the villages around the Golan Heights, were getting from us humanitarian help. We hospitalized them, we helped them. Many of them, perhaps most of them, were Sunni Arabs, and this is the majority. Okay? We used to help the Lebanese in South Lebanon for a long time, in Israel. Okay? Now, it was associated with the Israeli occupation of Lebanon, and I supported terminating the occupation of Israel in South Lebanon. Although the motivation was security, I thought it was a bad idea to stay there. And in 2000, when Barak decided to get out, I supported it. But would I support them if it were acceptable for whoever is in Syria to let them be helped by us? Yes, I would. If they would have wanted, and I could, I would. Why not?
Right. We don't want people to be attacked by radicals anywhere around us.
Yes, but you see, this is the humanitarian part of it. But having friendly relations with people around our borders is also a strategic consideration. And the two are intertwined. So why not?
What do you think the thing is that people in the West are not thinking about, that they ought to be thinking about right now, that we haven't talked about yet?
Look, there are many things, because we have a crisis throughout Western civilization. There is a crisis of democracy. And we have it in Israel. And the fact that the caliber of the people who are in our parliament is so low is not an Israeli phenomenon. You look at Europe, you look at the United States, you look at all over the world, and you see that democracy is in crisis. And it is in crisis to some extent for the same reason that I've discussed before, namely progressivism. For instance, is transparency a good thing? Yes. Is total transparency a good thing? No. The result is that governments today are so transparent that when people have a discussion, they no longer speak to the subject, they speak to the protocol.
How do you mean?
They no longer concern themselves with what is good, but with what looks good. And very often what looks good is not good. Okay? And very often what sounds good is not good. For instance, saying, stop the war, sounds good, people are not killed. What if somebody came to the Allies in 1943 and said, stop the war? Would if it saved hundreds of thousands of lives? Yes. Would it have resulted in killing millions of people? Yes. So when you are obsessed with what looks good and sounds good because everything is transparent, you can't have a serious discussion about options because everybody is recording you. And when you give a part of it in the news, people will change their attitude and you will lose power. And people even dumber than you. And believe me, there is no rock bottom to stupidity. You can always go deeper. Okay? So very often you say to yourself, I will do something that I know will be counterproductive because the alternative, somebody even dumber than me and more irresponsible than me, will be in power. So we have the problem now of everybody trying to cater to the dumbest. The dumbest is called social networks. Okay? If you're afraid of what people will say, usually the people who write should be those who don't deserve to be read. Okay? Because this is what they do. They comment on things even if they don't have anything to say because they have a keyboard. And they can reach many people. And if they can do something funny, then people will listen to them. And if they have if they're well known, then people will seek advice for them. Like when you before, when you won a beauty pageant and they would ask you, what do you really want? And you would say, world peace. People would say, well, we know what got her elected. It's not her intellect. She may also have an intellect, but this is not what got her elected. But when people become influencers and they have so many people who follow them, and they have so many people who follow them, not because they have something to say, but because they have something to say that is attractive, not necessarily something to say that is wise. Maybe sometimes they cohabitate, but very rarely do they cohabitate. So we have to learn to set limits to transparency. Okay? So, do you want your actions to be always transparent? For instance, in your bedroom, in your toilet? Do you always want to be transparent? Do you want every discussion in government to be transparent? Or do you want people to be able to bring up ideas and later to be convinced that they were wrong? But imagine if this is filmed. Then the fact that they were proven wrong will get them out of power. Okay? So, would I have cameras in Parliament? No, because it makes Parliament a circus. Do I want cameras in courtrooms? No, because it makes this. Wherever there are cameras, there is a circus. Okay? So, do I want every legal procedure to be transparent in the sense that people who want to and are committed and come to the hearing and so on will be able to listen? Yes, but cameras make the judges who look the best and sound the best and can say the funniest things or things that sound wise but are stupid. There are a lot of things that sound wise and are stupid. So we have to rethink, to readjust our democracy. Do you have one leader today of any democratic country who is really a major leader? They said it about Angela Merkel, and they were wrong. She made two catastrophic mistakes with the Russians, oil and gas, and with the immigration. We have one impressive leader of a democratic country, Modi in India, but the kind of democracy in India that I consider a major success compared to the circumstances is not the kind of democracy I want in Israel or in the United States. Take Western democracies, there isn't a single leader. The Roosevelts, the Churchills, the Ben-Gurions would not be elected today because they may have said something that doesn't sound good, because they may have been recorded in circumstances where they didn't want to be recorded, because they may have had somebody helping them clean their house that was an illegal something, or you catch them doing something that doesn't look good.
And that's a problem for liberals, but that's not a problem for the extremes.
Yes. And if it's good for the extremes, then it's bad for the liberals.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
Either the fascist extreme or the progressive extreme. So, if there is one thing we all of us in Western civilization have to rethink, is to readjust. And we are very good. We've learned to live with with everybody having the vote. It was not an easy thing to cross. We have learned to live with television, which in the beginning was a major challenge. We learned to, for instance, mistrust journalists, which I think is a very important precondition for having, because today journalism is prostituted to the level where practically every journalist is pushing an agenda. They don't even try to understand reality. They just want echo chambers for the people who support them. We need to change this. We took a good thing On some issues we went too far, on other issues we didn't go far enough. For instance, did we go very far with women's positions in society? Yes. Is it enough? No. Should we go to the extreme of DEI? God forbid, it's a catastrophe. It's a catastrophe. If Trump only came for deleting this in itself is a major consideration when you judge his presidency. So you need, on the one hand, to promote women's equality much more than today, and I'm not objective. I'm the father of 3 daughters, and 3 daughters that are smarter than me. So I have a vested interest in it, but you should do it on a digestible level. You should do it when you have enough good candidates for every job that you want. And for some jobs you haven't, for some jobs you don't have yet. Okay? So for instance, would I want 100 years ago the same position for women that we have today, that I think is not sufficient? 100 years ago I wouldn't want it, because I would say, wait until women persuade men that equal women are good for men, because then it will be sustainable. Only when men understand that they don't need their privileges, that their life will be better without these privileges, then I want to promote it even more, and much more than today.
Well, but here there was a female prime minister.
Yes, but you see, that's easy. I mean, you don't have women equality in India in spite of Indira Gandhi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? What I want is women everywhere, okay? And I want them everywhere when they're qualified. And in most categories that I come across every day, they are. And I'm delighted. And I want to take it a step further and more steps further. But I want to do it in a way that is digestible. In other words, I'm a strategist and not an operational thinker. We spoke about it last time. Somebody who thinks operationally says, what's the problem? What's the solution? Somebody who thinks strategically says, here is a problem without solution. Let us improve the situation by having a good response that will be damage control of things we can't change, and using opportunities that this opens. So, will we ever have total equality between everybody and everybody? No. But can we seek it? Can we actively seek it? And can we seek it in a sustainable way? Sustainability is extremely important, because even if it is slower, but it is sustainable, it is preferable to a revolution that promotes a counter-revolution, and then you kill each other instead of doing things that you can achieve a broad consensus. Do you have to convince everybody? No. But do you have to convince the mainstream? Yes. So we, again, seeking perfection in transparency, in influence of the population over decision-making and so on. Did we go too far? Yes. Can we promote even these objectives in a way that is sustainable? Yes, because when the kind of people who go to politics are only those who can get up in the morning and swim in slime for 2 hours before they start their day, which is today the prerequisite for a successful politician. Do we want people who are not willing to do it, to go into politics? Yes. So again, I'm a radical centrist.
Well, you sound like you're actually a lot more, I don't know, radically optimistic too than one would guess based on your, irresolvable problems kind of
I'm an optimist because of the fact that I can deal with irresolvable problems, and I can live with not resolving them, but just by improving them dramatically. This is the essence. I know I'm going to use a term that I'll be sorry later, of human progress. Not in the progressive sense of the term, but in the ability that we have developed, particularly since the Renaissance, of a live and let live approach. Okay? The live and let live approach doesn't mean I like what you're doing or I agree with what you're doing. But as long as it doesn't threaten me, I don't mind what you're doing. Okay? And I'm optimistic because I have seen democracy and pluralism struggle with Nazism and win, struggle with Soviet communism and win, okay? And struggle, again, I'm taking the example of India, it's only 1.4 billion people, so why don't we bring it into our Eurocentric perspective of establishing a democracy in spite of the caste system, okay? Of seeing a country like Singapore lifting itself since 1965 from a shithole to one of the most successful countries that you have. Or South Korea becoming a democracy that can do what they just did recently, not because there are no problems, but because they managed to deal with a problem. As a Zionist, we revolutionized the Jewish people, okay? We rejected the rabbinical leadership. We stopped waiting for the Messiah. We have built this state of Israel. So not being an optimist is not recognizing reality.
Is there anything else that I should have asked that I didn't ask?
What more can I do for you and I haven't? This is usually what I want people to ask.
Okay, thank you very much.